Santana, you there, bud?
I'm here. What's good, fellas?
What's up, team?
Tana, I didn't get to see you last night. We'll get to the Jaden stuff, but let's just talk about the overall performance of that team. It was terrible. What did you see as that game unfolded?
Oh man, I've seen the same thing I've been seeing the last few weeks, man. We just ain't hitting like we've been hitting before. And I think what me and B have talked about before, man, and even Fred and Logan, when we're doing our shows with Command Center, when you have a few guys that you basically say, hey, these are the guys that we're going to go with, whether they're, you know, um, veterans or not, but these guys are going to be the makeup of our offense and defense. And then those guys go down. You will hope that the guys behind them could kind of like fill in that void. And it just hasn't been the case for us this year. Our second and third guys, because we have a lot of guys injured. Each and every week it seems like it's a new guy that's getting injured. But most teams have that backup or that third guy that can say, you know what, we can still plug and play and go out there and play the same kind of football. But that's not the case for us, man. And when you kind of going through that and you kind of see it now, because each week you feel like, okay, this week, maybe something's going to change next week. And now we understand that we just can't do the same things, schematically with those guys. So I think we've got to find a way to change, man, and kind of just, I guess you could say, navigate, a better plan amongst the guys that we got out there playing.
Tana, you played the receiver position at a really high level. When you watch what opposing offenses are doing to this Washington secondary, what do you see? Because, damn, it seems like these quarterbacks and receivers are getting what they want.
Yeah, it's odd, man, because at times I see good coverage. I see guys right there and just other guys making plays. And then at times I see we're trying to run something that the only way you can do that, because I used to tell, me and D Hall used to talk a lot when we was playing. I was like, D Hall, I watched the Patriots play us. And D Hall is one of the most, I think, underrated cornerbacks when it comes to just how he can, cover you man to man, but also, man, he had those instincts where he can make plays on the ball. And I watched D Hall cover Wes Welker for like 5 routes, in which he shouldn't have been covering them that long. Somebody should have got home and sacked the quarterback by then.
Uh-huh.
But I bring up this because if you don't put the pressure on the quarterback, the guy can have a second, the third, or fourth, or fifth opportunity. There's no way in hell you can ask that defensive back, that cornerback, to still stay in coverage or still be sticky, with that coverage. So what I'm seeing at times, we're running different things that we have to hit home. We have to get to that quarterback, and we don't. And we leave our cornerbacks, we leave our DBs out there in a situation where they can't win. They just can't win. And you're not seeing a lot of these guys running second and third options like we saw Kansas City. Last night, it was just, 3-step, 5-step, and boom. You know what I mean? Like Sam Darnold was on one, and we knew that coming to the game. The whole thing that we said leading into the game is we got to get Sam Darnold rattled. We got to get him to go to his second and third and fourth read. And you didn't see that at all last night. Last night, he dropped back and did what he wanted to do when he wanted to do it.
We talk a lot about complementary football, and I think people automatically assume we're talking about offense, defense, but secondary coverage and also pass rush, that's complementary football too. And I know the secondary is what's out there and they get blamed more, but hell, the pass rush and the D line had not been doing their job to even help those guys out in the secondary. How do they get more pressure?
That's a great question. I think, some of the things that we talked about each and every week is disguising some things, bringing guys from depth with blitzes and, things of that nature. But I think also, man, like you see this defense at times bend but don't break. And then you say, okay, we can live with that. But then, like you just talked about the complementary part of it, offensively, we don't go out there and do our job. So it's just collectively, man, we gotta find a way. Fortunately, me and you not happen to be in those meeting rooms dialing up and calling up plays. That's Joe Witt and Dan and all those guys' job, man. But when you're a former player and you're a guy that's now covering this team and speculating, you could just hope that those guys have an answer. And I think eventually they will. We teamers, man. We're gonna ride with these guys regardless, good or bad. But I just want to see a better product because I think it all falls back on, you individually as players. We can sit there and talk about the coaches all we want. We can sit there and talk about the scheme all we want. But you out there on the field, man, and like I was always told on every level of this game, whether it was high school, whether it was little league, high school, college or pros, you got to make a play. And regardless of what it is, I remember, man, me and Sean Teller was talking one night, leaving from a game, and we sat next to each other on the plane, and he kept trying to get me to talk. Tanner, talk to me, man. What's up, man? What's going on? And I was quiet. I didn't want to say anything. We had just lost to the Rams, and then I kind of got out my little, feeling bad for myself and started telling him what was going on. I'm like, man, I'm out there. I'm open. They ain't throwing the ball. And defensively, it's different because you don't have to wait on a guy to throw you the ball. You don't have to wait on a guy to give you a chance to be in the game. And Sean said, man, you know what, man? Coach had me covering this tight end this way all week in practice, and I kept telling him it's not going to work. It's not going to work. He said, I get in the ball game. He tell me the same thing in the middle of the play. Get inside. I'm like, it's not going to work. He said, you know what I did? I said, screw that. I'm going to do it the way I do it, and I got to make sure I prove to him that it's going to work. And he made the play. And he said when he came to the sideline, and coach looked at him and say, great way to make a play. And see, that's what we have to do sometimes as players. You got to kind of overcome coaching, man, and go out there and say, hey, if this is going to be a better way, let me go out there and make a play and make a difference and be the difference of us getting off this field.
That's the exact same thing I've been saying. Like you as a player, you do it so often. And I think when you go through practice, that's what you do. Practice is to figure out what the hell works and what doesn't. And if it doesn't work in practice, it probably won't work in the game because in practice, there's a card that's set up for you to have a defense to stop something or whatever. But when you get in the game, if you know it didn't work in the game, you have to be savvy enough and invested in your craft enough to be able to make that change. And that's why I kind of like when people say the scheme. Sometimes guys play in the same scheme and have success, and another guy come in and does exactly what the scheme says, and you don't have a lot of success. Yeah. And I feel those players got to take ownership in this thing just as much.
Yeah, you also got to think about it too, man. Earlier this year, I remember Joe Witt mentioning that there's certain things that is being called, and guys are just going out their way and doing their own thing. So it goes both ways.
Yeah,
what I'm saying? So I can't just sit here and take the player side and say, well, if he got you in a bad situation, then go out and make a play. But it also, that coach puts you in a situation where he's saying, I need you here because it's going to work. It's going to benefit, the entire, big picture of what we're trying to do defensively. Then as a player, you got to do that. Yeah. And a lot of times, you hear coaches bringing up, in those pressers, communication. They're not saying that for nothing because if you're sitting there watching the game, you see these guys talking to each other entirely too long at times. And you're like, well, eventually somebody got to know something and go play. We can't be still talking while this guy's in his count and thinking that we're going to be able to turn our heads around now and drop back and be ready for what's going on. So, it's something got to give, man. But like I said before, it's a long season still. Regardless of what we've been going through, it's a dark cloud over us right now with so many injuries. And then it just feel like it just don't get no better. We're talking about, some of the things that we saw last night when it comes to, Jaden and you name it, Marshawn Lattimore. That's been our season. Guy after guy after guy going down. So if these other guys are getting the opportunities, go out there and make a name for yourself. Go out there and show this team or somebody that you're worthy enough of being out there. And we've seen a lot of that already, but we just haven't seen that many guys step up and rise up to those opportunities.
Talking with our friend Santana Moss, Washington, great at wide receiver. You can watch him and B on the pre and post game on the Commanders' social media and YouTube channels. You can follow Santana on in Instagram at 8to9. Tana joining us via the Rude guest hotline. Rude makes the most reliable heating and air conditioning products in the DMV. Tana, you mentioned it there with Jaden. Obviously, this was a lost game in the second half. Jaden Daniels, down 31, was still on the field, late in the fourth quarter. Gets injured. We now know it's a dislocated elbow. We'll see what that looks like. We'll see if he's headed to IR. What did you make of Jaden being on the field in that situation?
I thought none of it, JP. I mean, I can see both sides of it, man. players play. You know, Jaden has been a guy that went out there last year with broken ribs. You know, and regardless of if we knew they was broken or not, he went out there with bruised ribs and still gave us his all. Players play the game. I understand how people look at it and say, well, you know, it's over. We should have took him out because he just came back. Yeah, but, you know, if he finished that game and doesn't get hurt, man, we say, well, at least we got him in a full game that he can be ready to go against Detroit next week. You know, it's damn if you do, damn if you don't. I find it odd because you understand where we at when you start hearing people kind of be disappointed or now they want to point the finger. Well, let's stop pointing the finger, man. At the end of the day, we not getting paid to call no plays or make decisions of who should be out there or not. All we can do is watch the game and cheer this team on. I hear so much before games from other people who's covering this team. They put so much out there about, well, if this happened, well, if this happened, well, if this happened, it's almost like you expected it to happen. And then when it happens, now we sitting there like, wow. You know what I mean? So players play football. I've been around this game for so long, man, as a player and now as an analyst. That's why I never listen to that crap, because I understand at the end of the day, it's about me. It's about me handling my business, and whatever they say, I'm going to let them say it because they're getting paid to say it. And for the ones who don't get paid to say it, they're going to say it because they're not optimistic or they don't have belief. And so with awards, those who don't have belief, that's one of the ones you find that say, hey, I sold my season tickets because I don't want to be a part of this franchise. But then now they're back. I know I went on a little too long with it, man, but it's just
No,
how I feel, man. It's something that me and B both kind of discussed, last night about it, man. Just, I understand how you feel as a fan base. I understand we went through a whole lot. Y'all been through a lot. So allow these teams, allow these players to go out there and do what they're paid to do. And let's just sit back and cheer them on. That's all we can do.
Well, I think because B kind of echoed your sentiments earlier. It's interesting to hear from guys that played the game at a high level not have the same questions about Jaden being out there. Whereas I think there's certainly in the fan base, and I'd say the media, like the non-former player media, there's a pretty big consensus that Jaden shouldn't have been out there. Where I think if Jaden was having just a regular season, you keep him in the game, right? But because he's already missed time and dealt with injuries, I think to me, what bothered me most was they punt to start the fourth quarter down 31-7. So if you're punting in the fourth quarter with that big of a deficit, you're already capitulating. You're already kind of surrendering this ball game. And if that's the case,
but not necessarily though, JP. I don't really think that's telling you that it's over. That's just telling you that let's give our defense a chance to fight still. Like honestly, you playing the game. Like you think I'm going to sit back there and go for it now, put my defense in harm's way and allow this team to, who's been willing and dealing, who's haven't missed. That guy was 21 for 24. So if I don't punt and I throw my defense back out there, now they backs against the wall again. That's an easy layup for a quarterback that hasn't missed. So that's how I look at it, But like I said, I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah,
you have the right to do so.
Well, you're making fair points too.
If he doesn't get hurt, we're not talking about this right now. We're not having them same sentiments. So that's why I'm like, hey, players play. Sometimes that's the way the cookie crumbles. Now I'm happy that it's nothing worse than what it is. But that's how football happens. And to add to it, man, it's just not about JD. It's not about Jaden Daniels. This entire team has been going down left and right, week after week. So regardless of our quarterback going down, everybody is going down. Something has to give.
Totally. Leaving that game last night, what are you more concerned by? Let's remove the injuries, specifically the Jaden situation. Offensively, they have no identity, and defensively, they cannot get stops. What do you think can improve? What do you think is the bigger problem?
I mean, I think right now, and it's easy for me to sit here. Like I said before, man, I don't sit in those rooms, and I don't have that luxury of saying this or that, for what we need to do. But I just think everybody got to keep chopping wood. And I say this so much. I know people are tired of me saying it, but that's what it's about, brother. I'm sure, coaching-wise, they will probably tighten up some things here and there. Right now, I think you have too much film now to look at and say, this is what we can do and this is what we can't do. That's nine weeks in football, and if we've been doing anything that we've been doing before and it hasn't worked, we're gonna have to scrap it. And I think that's the way you got to move forward. But also, with all that being said, it's still a lot of football left, but at the same time, you still want to win games. I think you have to look at your roster and say, okay, now I have to look at some of these other guys and see who I have here, so I can know what I have going forward. I mean, to me, that's common sense. I think for the guys who hasn't played, but the guys who showed you, who flashed here and there, whether it's on the practice field or whether it's on special teams or whether it's just, period throughout the time you had them here, you have to find a way to get them involved because, man, we got to put the best people on the field so we can see the best product, and that's what we got to do going forward.
Tana, I appreciate you making time for us, dude. I know it's a pretty miserable day, and thank you.
No doubt, bro.
All right, T. Be cool, brother.